too many to count, a carpet of crustaceans. The question is, what caused so many sea creatures to wash ashore? An investigation is underway.
What we are doing is compiling all the evidence possible to see if we're facing some kind of environmental crime.
People who fish the waters are convinced pollution is to blame, and they want action to be taken against those responsible. Environmental experts say some of the possible explanations include viruses, offshore oil exploration and poisoned food sources. For now, the reason this beach was turned pink remains a mystery. James Kelly, BBC News.
Every 3 years, governments, scientists and conservationists come together to discuss what they can do to protect threatened species. Trade in more than 35,000 species is already limited, if not banned. But as the world's population grows and the effects of climate change become more pronounced, thousands more plants and animals come under threat. At the meeting, governments increased protection for the South African rhino. They've put pressure on Mozambique, a major transit point for rhino horns, and also on Vietnam, the major importer. They've also moved to protect 5 species of sharks. A permit system will now control the trade in their fins. Bad news, though, for those hoping for trade sanctions against countries engaged in the ivory trade. Instead, all countries will have to report their stockpiles of ivory, and 9 countries have been given a year to improve enforcement. But conservationists say anything short of a global ban creates uncertainty, which is exploited by poachers and traders.
You need a ban when it comes to highly endangered species. That sends a very clear signal that there should be no hunting or trade. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of fuzziness regarding many of these species. So I do think CITES fell short.
The delegates also agreed to restrict the trade in Siam rosewood. But like all other species listed under the convention, the actual job of stopping the illegal trade now falls on individual countries. Countries now have 18 months to introduce new measures to protect 5 species of sharks. But as with many threatened species, conservationists say enforcement is just a first step. Countries also need to find ways of reducing the demand for the animals and animal products, and only that can ensure their long-term survival. Tarek Bazley, Al Jazeera.
Ivory has been a highly prized material in China for making everything from chopsticks to deities. The ivory trade is no longer legal in China, but that hasn't stopped illegal ivory from coming into the country. And this is fueling a poaching trade in Africa that's threatening the survival of elephants there.
The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, or CITES, finished a 2-week meeting in Bangkok on Thursday. One major item on the agenda was ivory, or elephant teeth. The demand for ivory from Asian countries, especially China, has fueled a poaching crisis of African elephants. Over the past century, it is estimated that 9 out of 10 elephants have died. In fact, if this rate continues, wild African elephants would be wiped out in less than 25 years. China's demand for ivory is a major factor in elephant poaching, and part of that demand could be due to ignorance. According to a 2011 study by the International Fund for Animal Welfare, many Chinese don't know how ivory is obtained.
About 70% of the Chinese don't know that the elephants have to die for them to get ivory.
One of the misconceptions is that elephant tusks fall out naturally, like deer shed their antlers. But unlike deer antlers, elephant tusks do not grow back. Daphne Sheldrick takes care of orphaned elephants at Tsavo National Park. She recounts the irony of Chinese tourists asking about ivory after seeing elephants orphaned by the ivory trade. International ivory sales to China are illegal. Most experts agree that cutting China's demand for ivory would save both conservation resources and elephants. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
A dawn briefing for wildlife rangers in Thailand. Their mission is to keep watch over one of the last strongholds in Southeast Asia of the tiger. This sanctuary has to be guarded around the clock. The patrols are armed. This has the look of a military operation, just as well, because there's a kind of war being waged here to defend the tigers from the constant threat of highly professional poachers. Automatic cameras positioned in the jungle picture these highly prized animals. Thailand used to have thousands living in the wild. Now the largest single population is here, and it only totals about 60. The numbers are dwindling because many people, especially in China, believe tiger skins and body parts have medicinal value, and they'll pay very high prices. And these are some of the poachers, pictured on their own mobile phones, straddling the body of a tiger. They're now in jail.
One gang can poison and kill more than 20 tigers in just like 2 or 3 months' time. So that quite 1/3 of the population here. So that means you have to keep on guard.
But tigers are very big business. 6 months ago, these cubs were found heading out of Thailand. Demand is intense. As wild tigers become harder to find, people breed them in captivity instead. 3 years ago, one drugged tiger cub was even found in a suitcase at Bangkok airport. For the moment, the tigers in the sanctuary are relatively safe. Their numbers are low, but fairly stable. But as to their long-term survival, well, there's no guarantee. David Shukman, BBC News, in Thailand.
The global trade in ivory and rhino horn tops the agenda of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, or CITES, conference in Bangkok. Officials are debating imposing bans on all wildlife trade in 19 countries unless they crack down on the poaching, smuggling and the sale of illegal ivory. VOA's Henry Ridgewell reports.
Rangers inspect a dead rhinoceros in Mpumalanga, South Africa last year. It has been killed for one reason: its horn hacked off as the animal lay dying. Poaching for rhino horn and ivory has soared in recent years. It's at the top of the agenda for the 178-nation CITES conference in Thailand. Elephant poaching is also on the increase. Campaigners say a ban on international ivory trading, signed in 1989, has been weakened and undermined. Kenya is one of the countries pushing for a crackdown on the illegal ivory trade in Asia. In the shadow of Mount Kilimanjaro, Steve Njumbi manages conservation programs with the International Fund for Animal Welfare.
There is a misconception amongst most of those who demand or want to use the ivory that ivory falls off elephants just like hair does. Message to them, people in China, people in Thailand: an elephant must die violently. Very, very violently.
Charlotte Davies of the Environmental Investigation Agency based in London says 35,000 elephants a year are being killed for their tusks, mostly by organised criminals.
There's an international ban on the trade in ivory, but there were 2 one-off legal sales, one in 1999 and one in 2008. And in China, for example, there is a domestic legal ivory market. But this isn't very well policed, it's not well enforced, there are loopholes, and it means that illegally acquired ivory, that's ivory from poached elephants, can be laundered into that system.
Critics say those one-off sales simply fuel demand in Asia. The Environmental Investigation Agency says its research suggests 90% of the ivory traded in China is illegal. Again, Charlotte Davies.
And what EIA is saying at CITES is close down all markets and stop confusing people who think they can buy ivory legally when in fact it's just posing a threat to the elephants on the ground.
Campaigners warn that extinction is a real possibility unless a global agreement banning the trade is signed and enforced.
Honourable Prime Minister, Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Today you are embarking on an extremely important journey. What you decide in this room over the next 2 weeks could determine the fate of some of the world's most captivating species, as well as many lesser-known plants and animals that warrant equal attention. As we enter 2013, the world's natural resources are under threat as never before. We know from the data and analysis presented to this meeting that the illegal killing of the African elephant and rhino and the related illegal trade in their ivory and horn has reached shocking levels in the past few years. Such threats are not confined to the African continent, with many Asian species now also coming under threat. We must do more to combat this serious crime if we are to reverse the current alarming trends. If not, we could soon see some populations of these creatures, or even an entire species, disappear from the wild. We simply must not let this catastrophe unfold. Our children should have the same opportunity that we have to experience wildlife in its many beautiful and varied forms. I recently had a chance to meet John Scanlon, your Secretary General, to discuss these issues. As we all work together, we can reverse these trends. We can make a difference. And what you decide right here in Bangkok will make that difference. At this crucial meeting, you will also consider many other important issues, including whether to bring additional timber species under CITES controls, as well as several sharks and rays. In doing so, you have the best available science before you to help inform your decisions. The Kingdom of Thailand has been characteristically generous in hosting this very special conference of the parties. If I may, I would like to wish all participants a highly productive and successful meeting. There will undoubtedly be differences of opinion from time to time, but I know that you are all bound by a common objective to ensure the survival of the planet's wildlife. It is 40 years to the day since the convention was signed in Washington, D.C. So please join me in wishing CITES a very happy 40th birthday. Thank you.
Acting on a tip-off, rangers try to stop suspicious cars leaving Pupayon National Park in the middle of the night. The cars accelerate through. What follows is a dangerous high-speed chase. The vehicle in front acts as a block for the other car further ahead, which is believed to be carrying logs taken illegally from the forest. The rangers fire guns into the air, but it doesn't seem to perturb the offenders. The pursuit continues on foot, but it's hopeless. With no support from other government agencies, the rangers are defeated and the loggers are gone, along with their high-priced bounty.
This is the first time they have used this method with 3 cars. The middle one was packed with rosewood.
By day, the under-resourced and understaffed rangers trek into the bush to survey the latest damage. There are signs everywhere that this park in the northeast, like many others in Thailand, is under regular attack. The smugglers work in 2 separate teams. The first team will come in and actually chop the trees down. Then more often than not, they will leave the area straight away. The second team moves in when they think the area is safe enough, and they will begin the task of processing the logs. And here you can see the remains of a makeshift sawmill in the middle of the forest. And this is what the buyers are after, the unique dark grain of the Thai rosewood. At the headquarters of this park, millions of dollars worth of seized wood and vehicles serve as a reminder of the scale of the problem, and this is just one park. But most gets through and is shipped across the borders into Laos and Cambodia and onto China, a process aided by corruption. In China, it's worth $30,000 to $50,000 per cubic meter and is made into furniture and veneer.
The loggers come up with new patterns all the time. They now chop the timber into smaller pieces, making it easier to smuggle. So I would say the situation is serious and critical.
The CITES conference in Bangkok offers some hope. But even if member nations vote to tighten controls on Thai rosewood, corruption and a lack of cohesive policing around the region will ensure the market remains alive. Wayne Hay, Al Jazeera, Sakon Nakhon, Thailand.